Hi there. Actually, forgot that I was all muted and avatared and all that. Uh, but yeah, thanks for coming to the very first discussion, live stream discussion for the Old Works Classic uh, Book Club. Yeah, so it's Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, indeed. I've got my copy actually right here, so I can show it. Yeah, so I was thinking, like, I could tell the little bit of a story of how I picked this book actually um, for the first read for the club, and it's actually a really simple story that's sort of just particular to me. So a little bit of Michael lore, I guess. I actually don't buy really anything online. You know, once in a blue moon, if it's something that's really important and I can't find it, in store and all that, then I'll do it. But yeah, so when I was thinking about what I could, have for the very first book pick, I literally just went to the bookstore because if you order online, then you can just really think about what you want to do, and then you can just order it online, right? But if it's more a thing where you want to support your local bookstore, blah blah blah, then you just got to see what they've got, and you can go around to different stores. Also, I was kind of even too lazy to do that even. So I was kind of just, I just kind of picked one, basically the closest one to my house, and I think I actually had decided on Virginia Woolf. Hi, Mark. How are you? Nice to see you. Um, yeah, I had decided on Wolf, but I just wasn't sure what they would have there of hers, and I actually knew, and I knew very little actually about Virginia Woolf. I still know very little, maybe a little bit more. Um, but I just did a little bit of quick research, and I was kind of like, it seemed like Mrs. Dalloway was kind of like her big, um, sort of more most famous work. And I actually had a friend, an editor friend, um, when I was an editor, who actually had a cat. And she named her cat Dally, and I remember it was because of Mrs. Dalloway, which was, yeah, I believe it was actually her favorite book ever. So, that was good. And so I was kind of led to believe it was basically Mrs. Dalloway Orlando, essentially, and To the Lighthouse, that were kind of like her most famous works. And so I kind of knew that going into the store. And then when I got to the store and I kind of made my way over to the W section, I saw, to my surprise, there were a whole bunch of Wolf books. It was even like I could kind of choose between different editions. But I saw the Penguin Classics Deluxe edition of To the Lighthouse. And since this is my favorite, book series in publication, it was kind of a no-brainer to me. And also because it was one of those three books, like I said, it was kind of a no-brainer to me to just buy that one and go with To the Lighthouse. And then it was kind of from there, I just bought it. I went home and I started like making the first Instagram post for the book. So that's just kind of how it worked out. A bit of backstory. Very, maybe more practical than you might have thought, right? Um, but yeah, so I've read the book. I've read every word of it. I really enjoyed it, actually. Um, uh, yeah. What could I even talk about? So, um, I feel like, you know how sometimes you watch like a war movie or something, and it's like uh, right in the beginning of the movie, it at least it feels like you're hit with like all these different soldiers or all these different characters, and you kind of don't know who's who. Um, but then as the story progresses, you learn like who's who, and by the end of the book, you know, or by the end of the movie rather, um, you know, kind of like all of them well. But the only thing is, you've watched like the whole first half hour or 45 minutes of the movie kind of being quite confused. And so you really feel like you could go back to the beginning of the movie and watch again, you know, then knowing who's who. And then you could kind of like um, really have the light bulb go off on like exactly what's going on for the whole movie with all of the different characters. I kind of got that feeling with this book because Wolf does, and I don't think this is good or bad. I'm just kind of mentioning it as a first topic, but I feel like Wolf kind of does that because you're just kind of there, um, like on the island or in the house, and there's just kind of everyone there, um, basically from the get go. So right away, there's James, and right away she's dropping. Um, what's his name, Mr. Tansley, and Mrs. Ramsey, Mr. Ramsey, a couple of the kids, like right away. Um, and so there's the kind of that aspect of not, at least for me, of not knowing who's who. And even by the time you get to the scene where, or at least the part where Mrs. Ramsey goes into town, um, and before going into town, she asks, "What's his name again?" Augustus Carmichael, excuse me, if he needs anything, blah blah blah, papers, pens from in town, tobacco, um, and Mr. Tansley tags along. Um, even like through that whole part where she's in town, I was still kind of quite confused, I will admit, as to sort of like who was who. Um, but yeah, just like watching that Hollywood, war movie, as it goes on, everyone sort of becomes clear to you, um, in terms of, in the story, who's who. So I kind of had that effect. I'm thinking that eventually this book will be a reread just because I enjoyed it so much. And, it's not an issue in the sense that once you get to the reread, um, you'll know who everyone is. And so it's kind of just a thing for the first read, let's say. Um, but yeah, Heather's here. Hi, Heather. I did really like your edition of the book. I didn't know there was one like yours, or would have gotten it earlier. Can you show it off a little more? Yeah, no worries. And also, Cool Gamer's here. Hi, Cool Gamer. How are you? Yeah, so I'm not gonna go. Well, I mean, I am full screen. I'm that was a little bit of a noob moment. I'm not full screen for myself, but anyway. So this is the front. Is it? It's kind of hard to Everybody knows. It's all backwards and everything. So this is the spine here and the back. Let's get this tassel thingy out of the way. Here's the back. Ah, it's an OCD kind of moment, right? Like trying to get it straight and all that. Um, and yeah, the deckled edges, of course, with the Penguin Classics Deluxe Edition. Um, yeah, so it's actually a comic, and um, basically on the front we have Mr. Tansley kind of famously saying to Lily Briscoe, women can't paint. And then it says later, and then you've got Mr. Ramsey, Lily, and that would be, this here would be Mr. Banks, William Banks. And then opposite Lily would be Mrs. Ramsey, and then beside Mrs. Ramsey here would be, Mr. Tansley, I believe, yeah. But the only thing is, I remember when I was reading this this dinner scene, I thought it wasn't quite right because Woolf says that Mrs. Ramsey is wearing like a black blouse, basically. And in this picture, she's wearing a purple one. And also in the actual book, Mr. Tansley is sitting directly opposite of Lily and not one seat over. Wolf makes a point to say that he's sitting right in front of her and like blocking the window. So I don't know why they kind of mix it up a little bit. And also there's the whole thing about Lily with the thing. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's not a familiar word, at least to me. It's kind of an old-timey word for something like that on the table. But you can see her moving it on the tablecloth, and you can see that the tablecloth is white. But in the book, it certainly isn't. There's like a design, and Wolf actually makes a point to say that because Lily actually moves it like in relation to the design and like right onto a flower or something like that in the design. So just little bits of almost like trivia or something, just nerding out about this particular cover. But on the back there is, it's, I think it's the salt shaker, or it's something, really close to that. I could even look it up, but it's not too, maybe I will a little bit later, but yeah, something like that. I wonder if the comics change anything significant compared to just reading the book. I don't think so. I think it's just kind of like, I'll actually get back to this because I'll just show the back as well. So on the back, we have just, there's actually a clock, and you can see like in the first frame, it's, it's not drawn very well. The two arms are the same length, but basically it's about 8:54, we'll say, in the evening. And they're kind of in their room. So Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, and it's, I don't know if it's alluding to or it's illustrating an exact scene in the book, but it's certainly like the spirit of kind of like what's going on when you read it. The comic does make a lot of sense. But, it's basically they're kind of chilling, doing the thing. Mr. Ramsey's reading, Mrs. Ramsey's knitting, and basically Mr. Ramsey is at once kind of like portraying to his wife that he doesn't want her to bother him. And yet at the same time, this is kind of the thing that Wolf talks about. At the same time, he kind of like wants her to register his reading his book. So like, for example, what frame is it? There's the frame where he, yeah, it's this one here. It's this one here. He's like, right here, he's reading and he gets to a funny part in the book and he's laughing and he's slapping his knee. And he wants her to leave him alone basically as he's reading, but he also wants her to register it when he's reading and he's like getting to a funny part, you know? So he's basically being super needy, right? And as the sort of evening progresses through the frames, you know, Mrs. Ramsey, I think, is still reading, I think, or knitting. Yeah, she's knitting. She's not switching to reading herself. But basically, as it gets later and later into the evening, he's kind of not necessarily getting more bored with his reading, but he's just starting to seek sympathy from her. And so that's why by the end, you know, he's kind of like, if you look here, he's kind of got his book down now. Even here, I think, I can't see from in the StreamYard. Yeah, so here he's like, here he's still got his book in his lap, but he's already starting to look to her for, you know, sympathy and validation and all of that. And then by here, he's actually got his book down, and by the last frame, you know, she's already starting to give him that sympathy, you know. So it's kind of like a thing that portrays not necessarily an actual scene that's shown in the book, but, you know, certainly when you read it, it's an evening that definitely could play out for sure. So, like, you know, the spirit of it at least. But yeah, to get back to this, Heather, yeah, that's really all it is. It's just the front and the back. And actually there's also in the, what do you call them? The French flaps. There's also, like, this is in the front. What is this here? Oh, this is, yeah, this is Mrs. Ramsey with James, you know, so this would be in the first part of the book. And then in the back part of the flap, there's just Lily painting, you know, and yeah, painting there close to the water and all, as she does for quite a bit of the book. So yeah, I mean, it's just kind of nice to have, I guess, Heather, for the edition. And yeah, and Loretta's here. Hi, Loretta. Hey, Michael, I'm at work, so I'll have to watch the replay, but I wanted to say hi and give this video a like. I loved the book, and I'm excited for what you pick next. Yay. Thank you, Loretta. And I'm glad you loved the book, that you liked it, and, you know, that makes me happy for sure. Ditto, I liked it a lot too myself. And Loretta, this is for you with love from Mark. Yeah, so what else did I want to talk about? So I kind of felt like, actually, just let me have it. When you're the only one on screen, it's kind of like you want to take a sip. It's like everyone kind of has to wait for you and all that, you know. My apologies. Just a sec here. How do you feel about Mrs. Ramsey and Mr. Ramsey's relationship? Mrs. Ramsey was very forgiving to the men in her life, LOL. She certainly was. Not only forgiving, but very, I would say, in tune with their needs, as they wouldn't have conveyed them to her so much through words, but even just gestures and looks in the eye and, expressions and things like that. She certainly was. I think that was like, doesn't Wolf say at a certain point that is what like a lot of people admire about her? That's kind of like, that ties in a lot with why so many people admire her. But at the same time, while a select few kind of don't like her or something like that. I mean, that sounds about right. I could be remembering it wrong. But yeah. So how do I feel about their relationship? That's a good question. I mean, I feel like they had a good relationship. And it's kind of this scene here, or at least in the book, the equivalent of this scene, because I remember there is a scene at least very similar to this. I think in the actual scene, she's knitting and then reading or something. But that scene, probably right near the end of part one, I think kind of like all on its own, does illustrate how I think at least they had a good relationship. They were able to just kind of sit there and chill together and whatnot. Now, would it be? I think someone once said to me that in every relationship, and it's maybe a bit of an exaggeration, or I'm exaggerating what I heard a little bit, but something to the effect of every relationship has like a giver and a taker, like someone is giving and someone is taking in this relationship, even if it's not like a partner type of relationship, even if it's a working relationship or a friendship or something. And I think that there is truth to that. I think it's also more complicated than that. I think you can have a friendship or a partner type relationship where it's a mix of sort of like the two, and each person is giving and taking, maybe not in exactly the same proportions or something. But I think it's safe to say that, at least according to this sort of exaggerated archetype, I would say it's pretty safe to say that Mrs. Ramsay would be the giver, and Mr. Ramsay would be the taker. I mean, that's my take on it. But sometimes that's the way it is, and I think that they had a good relationship. I think they had everything figured out, and I think that it was kind of like a well-oiled machine, over the years. And they did have 8 children together, so there's also that. Excuse me. Yeah. This actually, well, maybe I'll get back to what I'm about to say, but I hope that that answers your question, Heather. Do let me know how you feel about their relationship, or even if you just agree or disagree with what I've said. But yeah, I feel like there's kind of like obviously the book, for how it's written, stream of consciousness, and there was the whole, I don't know anything about it. I did just do a little bit of research on it, but it was the whole thing with modernism and the stream of consciousness style, and Woolf being one of the trailblazers of that style, and of modernism. I mean, so there's that in terms of how it's actually written. I personally noticed the stream of consciousness style um, like quite a bit in the beginning, even for like the first half of the first part, let's say. But as I started to read along, maybe I just got used to it or something. And I remember I was in like the third part, just reading happily, and it just occurred to me that I hadn't even thought about the um, stream of consciousness style at all for like the last 100 pages or something, because I just kind of gotten used to it. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it is stream of consciousness writing, but maybe it's also just writing, and it's just good, high quality writing, very thoughtful writing, very intelligent. Yeah, it just kind of I just at least got used to it myself, and just, you know, I just read the book, right? I just read it as writing. But um, actually, yeah. So there's that. I did of course want to touch on the stream of consciousness style, but I feel like there's kind of like two main themes. And again, I purposely didn't research the book for all of the themes as the academics would really say it, because I kind of wanted to just have my own impression and stuff. Um, but to me, there's kind of two main themes in the book. And the first would be, what is the first now? Well, the first would be like, um, like, I want to say that one actually, though, second. Not that there's not necessarily an order, but what was the, just a sec here, let me think. The pressure. I'm going to need another sip of coffee here. Yeah. Well, I would say maybe the other one will come to me. But I do feel like let's say the main theme of the book is like this idea of like, okay, I remember now. They're kind of like the same thing, but they're kind of like different. They're kind of like the same thing, but expressed different ways. So anyway, it's kind of like this thing of when someone says something, um, or thinks something that's mean spirited, or um, even like downright violent, or something like that. You know, even thinking about murder or whatever it is. There is like the person is kind of like not exactly um like, how do I say this? They mean something else, right? It's like, for example, when Mr. Tansley says on more than one occasion in the book that women can't paint, directly to Lily. Maybe in a way he does actually mean that, but it's his way of saying something else. Like, it's his way of kind of like trying to gain her attention and therefore her approval, basically. So this is something that I feel like Woolf was really going for. It's like some people actually show their respect for you, or they show their want to be acknowledged by you by saying something mean to you, if that makes sense. And so it's like every mean thing that someone says is basically like a cry for help in a way. Um, and so Wolf seemed to me to really understand this very keenly. And so whenever someone in the book will say something mean or selfish or whatever, um, Wolf is always showing the other side of that, if that makes sense. So, like, for example, when Mr. Tansley says to Lily, women can't paint, women can't write, blah, 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 like, Lily doesn't dwell on that. What Lily does, like, pretty much right away, is she breaks down not necessarily the idea itself, but what the idea says about Mr. Tansley, right? Like, brought out by Mr. Tansley. So when he says women can't paint, what Wolf is basically saying is that doesn't say anything about women and painting, but it does say a lot about Mr. Tansley, right? And so this is what, like, when he says something like women can't paint, this is what Lily is thinking about. She's thinking about Mr. Tansley as opposed to, like, being offended or whatever. I'm sure she's a little bit offended because it is obviously just totally outrageous. You can't say that half of the human species can't paint or can't write or whatever, right? That's just ridiculous. But she's able to. It's almost like in like a police interrogation, when there's someone in the room that the detective is talking to, and maybe the person is already very much a suspect, let's say, and so the detective might ask, like, a couple questions of the suspect, right? But the detective isn't listening to, like, isn't paying attention to what the answers are. Rather, the detective is paying attention to the responses, right? Like, not what the suspect is saying, but how they're saying it. So what makes them fidget a bit more or seem a little more on edge? What makes them more comfortable, so you could sort of use that as the baseline. And so it's kind of like that thing where it's not about what's actually being said, but more how it's being said. And I just bring this comparison in because I feel like everything that Mr. Tansley and maybe a couple other men throughout the book, but basically what Mr. Tansley says isn't so much about what he says, but more about what those things say about him. And I feel like Wolf really understood that, really was conscious to explore that, and mostly through Lily. In terms of what Lily's thoughts would be following those comments. But yeah, let's see here. That's interesting. I think similarly, Charles exemplifies that idea the most, probably. He's very angry and insecure and seems to lash out. Yes, absolutely. For sure, he is in the book the sort of like poster child for the dramatic things said. The dramatic, at least as we would say now, sound bites. But it also ties in with something else that I was thinking of as I was reading. And I think Wolf did this very well also, but there are people like Mr. Tansley who say awful things throughout the book. There are people who do selfish things. Mr. Ramsey comes to mind. And there's all these kind of like things that are sort of like the bad things that we do, but there's no villains in the book. There's no one that you would call um, like an antagonist. I would say that the closest would be Mr. Tansley. Um, but even with Mr. Tansley, Wolf makes a point to say about twice, as far as I can remember off the top of my head, how much Mrs. Ramsey actually likes him. So even with Mr. Tansley, Wolf is basically painting him not as like an antagonist or anything like that, but as a complete person, right? Like she does this so well. Everyone is the exact opposite of like a cardboard cutout. Everyone is like this complete person. Some people are more just sketches, maybe because they're not so important and because there are so many characters for her to cover. So some people are more just like sketches or something like that. Mr. Carmichael would come to mind for me in terms of that. But yeah, everyone is just really realized really well. And just getting back to the thing with Mr. Tansley, like Mrs. Ramsey likes him, and there is there's actually probably a couple parts where the narrative is written from his point of view, and there's the part early in the book where they're in town, right? And the narrative voice shifts to his, and they're like in that house. Mrs. Ramsey's calling on a friend in town, and they're like for at least a short time in that house, and she's talking with her friend, and then I think the sort of penny drops for Mr. Tansley, and he's like, it just suddenly strikes him how beautiful she is, and he's like, I must hold her things, like a schoolboy would do for a schoolgirl, walking home and stuff. But he's suddenly like, yeah, I've got to hold her things as we walk back to the house and stuff. And that was kind of like, to me, the funniest moment in the book. It was like kind of like the one moment where I remember there was another moment later on, but it was more subtle. But that moment where he's like, I've got to hold her stuff. To me was like the one clear kind of like funny moment, or the one clear joke that Wolf made in the whole book. And I think it says a lot that it's made through Mr. Tansley. Like she's given the most sort of lighthearted moment to the person who could most readily be identified as, the bad guy, basically, in the story, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that nobody's the bad guy, and it's kind of like in real life. It's like you may not like someone or whatever it is, but they're people too, and maybe they're not perfect, and maybe there's this or that involved, but it's not like in reality everyone is good and everyone is bad, and so that's kind of like what Wolf is going for here. She's not going for like characters just to fit into character types or character molds or whatever. Rather, she's just drawing or painting literally everybody as they are, as particular people. And I'm sure she was also really inspired in her real life to create, this character or that based on this real person and that person. Like I'm sure they were inspired by real people in her life. But yeah, just that's kind of like my kind of book, basically, where it's not like you have characters A, B, and C just to be characters A, B, and C in terms of the in terms of the writing craft, like this is the good guy, this is the bad guy, this is the good guy's friend or something like that, or the neutral person in the middle, but rather just a book that's just a story, and a story about really well realized characters who really come across as being real people, and that's how we also connect most with characters, and therefore feel the most when things happen to characters, right? So yeah. Human complexity, indeed. Yeah. So my apologies. I think that is the main theme. So I would just say it's kind of like the one main theme. Do excuse me saying that there were kind of two main themes. I take that back. It's basically the one, and I think that's basically it for me. And I also wanted to say that in terms of this theme of like maybe when we say or we do something really negative or really bad or something like that, it's really like basically a cry for help. I think that it is shown most clearly and most powerfully in James, and just the part like actually at the end of the book, where it's like Wolf is saying on 2 or 3 occasions, it's like if James in this moment had a knife or something like that, he would, like literally stab his father through the chest with it in this moment, because his hatred for him, for Mr. Ramsey, is that strong. And so there's like that, idea. I'm sure he wouldn't actually do that, but I think what Wolf's point is that at least the feeling, the emotion, the urge is there at least. He wouldn't actually do it in real life, but but to have that, right, as kind of like the setup, but then to have that in that moment, it's the 2 words are well done, right? Just 2 words. So it's just the 2 words that Mr. Ramsey says, probably quite loudly, but I think he's not even facing James or anything. He just says, well done, right? Like, because James has been steering the boat all of the way to the lighthouse, right, in the end of the book. He's been the tiller, right? And so, just to say thanks, just to, acknowledge James and say thanks for steering the boat for all of this time. He just says those 2 words, well done. And he just, like I said, he just kind of says them, I think, to the air, but everybody knows who he's addressing and what he's talking about. And it's just those 2 words that James needs, right? That's it. And as he's thinking about, plunging a knife through his father's heart, consciously, subconsciously, all he really wants is just that nugget, just that little bit of acknowledgement that that his father loves him and approves of him, and just that little bit of acknowledgement, right? So then, Mr. Ramsey, just by saying well done, clearly, to James for steering the boat, that's all James needs, and immediately he's won over and everything like that. And that was probably the most like impactful moment for me in the book. And so, yeah, it just kind of illustrates that main theme that I think is the main theme of the books, at least. It just illustrates it, I think, very, very, powerfully, like, and clearly, more so than at any other point in the book. But yeah, um, thank you, Heather. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about the book. I mean, I can always yak and yak and whatnot, I guess. You know, I'm long winded. But actually, I was wondering if any of you watching had any questions or things that you wanted to bring up. Do, type them into the chat and everything. And, I'll be sure to bring them up and we can talk about them a bit. To actually give you a little bit of time, maybe to put something in there. I'm actually going to just go and get the rest of my coffee. So I'll be back in about 100 seconds or so, let's say. Shall we take a rough 100-second break at this point? Yay. Yeah. Yay. So I've indeed got my coffee. I've got the last of my coffee, actually. But yeah. Also, I've written a poem for this book, and it's in the description. So before I forget to mention that, do of course feel free to check that out. And yeah, as we finish after the stream or something, I had fun writing it, and it is indeed a poem for the book. Yeah. I don't have much else. I think you hit a lot of the important parts. But thanks so much for the live and book suggestion. I don't think I would have read this on my own, but I'm glad I did. Yay. Thank you, Heather. Yeah, definitely. I would say Mrs. Dalloway would be kind of like the go-to book as far as like Virginia Woolf would be concerned. But yeah, maybe it's a little bit off the beaten path, so to speak. Um, yeah, well, if there's nothing else, I think we can just about call it a live discussion stream. First one for the book club for To the Lighthouse, and we can kind of like slide in under the 1 hour mark. Um, but yeah, maybe like closing thoughts. I just really liked the book. It does require like it asks quite a bit from you, just like attention wise or attention span wise or something. Um, it asks quite a bit of you, but it also gives you a lot in return, I feel, if you are willing to kind of like commit to that and to reading it. So yeah, it's just my kind of book. It really doesn't, as far as I know, follow so much book structure. It doesn't follow so much structure in terms of characters, like I was saying. Characters are just kind of people and real seeming people and real feeling people, as opposed to characters who are just there to serve certain, models in the story. And yeah, I thought the writing was very beautiful. Very clear, obviously, and I know Anya was talking about this in her streams, but and hi Anya, if you do, watch in the rewatch or the replay and everything, but yeah, despite the long sentences, I feel like it's clear writing and like as I'm reading, it's clear to me what she's getting at for any given sentence or something. Also, like I was just reading, I remember like thinking about this over and over as I was reading, just like the sheer intellect of Woolf's, like just how intelligent of a person you would have to be to basically fill like whatever it is, 184 pages of just continuous flowing stream of consciousness thought, and just like the constant flow of intelligent, meaningful ideas and thoughts and everything portrayed through the characters. Yeah, I just thought like, Wolf is just like so intelligent, to be able to write something like this, and it really shows because whether the writing is beautiful or not, she wouldn't even be able to write it at all or write the book the way it is without having just like a tremendous amount of intelligence. So that also really struck me, impressed me, and yeah, I'm glad I read it, and yeah, I just had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, I will definitely. This is actually I don't know if I said. Yeah, I did kind of say this, not directly in the beginning, but this is my first book of Wolf's that I've read. My first anything that I've read of hers. But I'm definitely a fan. So from here, I'll definitely read more. I'll probably go next for the Go to Mrs. Dalloway. And then maybe from there, something else, or Orlando even, or something else. But definitely a fan. Will definitely keep reading her work. And yeah, and also I will, if you've kind of like made it this far in the stream or the video, I'll also make an announcement. So I have figured out my second book pick for the club. So the next one's going to be Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And yeah, that's going to be a 2-month read. just to sort of give you time if you do have to wait for the book to come in on hold at the library or something, or if for whatever reason you just need some time to acquire the book for yourself, and also just to read it because it's not a not a short book. So I just and I'm kind of making this announcement a bit late. So altogether, I just figured like this would be a 2-month read. So this will be the book club read for March and April. So at the end of April, we'll have our live discussion stream for that book too, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. So I'm already excited about reading that. I already have my copy bought. I can't show it, unfortunately, because it's kind of across the room. But yeah, I thought I'd just make that announcement. And of course, I'll make soon just the official, post to Instagram announcing that also. But yeah. Let me just see here. Mark, I loved writing style and submitted pretty much immediately to just enjoying the ride and not worrying about who all the persons were or where the plot was going it anywhere at all. I have no experience with classic literature nor read many books in general, and so I was a very slow reading for me, but I enjoyed it a lot. At some point, I changed to the audiobook version for ease and to get through the book in time for today. And I think the audiobooks format fits to the Lighthouse perfectly. Ah, yes. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And thanks for writing that, Mark. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I could definitely see it being a great audiobook. You could follow along. You could just listen to the audiobook, or you could also follow along with the text or anything. Yeah, for sure. Nice. Thanks, Mark. And Heather, Mark, I had to do audiobook myself. Definitely helped me to focus. I hear you. I hear you, Heather. Yeah, okay. Well, thanks, guys. And I think that will just about be it for the stream then. Yeah. Okay, then. To the Lighthouse, indeed, right? And yeah, yeah. I was never mind. Never mind. How do I get out of here? Thanks, bundles and bunches. Bye bye.